Hello everyone and welcome again to another review video. This time I have here the Minichamps Diecast Scale 118 Benetton Ford B194 from the 1994 Australian Grand Prix as driven by German legend Michael Schumacher, together with a half-scale helmet and a steering wheel. The year 1994 is known as one of Formula One's worst seasons. The deaths of Roland Ratzenberger and Ayrton Senna at Imola hang above it like a dark cloud. Many other drivers got injured as well during the season, and Karl Wendlinger was even in a coma for 19 days after a big crash in Monaco. The season was also a highly controversial one, with some teams caught cheating, with the Benetton team on the forefront of that. The early driver Michael Schumacher was seen as Senna's main competitor before the season started, but when Benetton and Schumacher outperformed the hotly anticipated new Senna-Williams combination early on, people began to suspect the Benetton team was doing something rather different, or say illegal. Although the FIA did find suspicious software on their car, they could never prove it actually ever had been used during the race weekends. After the dreadful Imola weekend, Schumacher seemed to romp to the championship, winning race after race. It all started to unravel, however, at the British Grand Prix. Michael got a black flag during the race, which the team then told him to ignore. They were subsequently disqualified from the race afterwards and given a 2-race ban. Benetton appealed, but this was rejected, and Schumacher was forced to miss the Portuguese and Italian Grand Prix. Schumacher then also lost a win in Belgium due to a technical infringement, and this all meant Michael was basically disqualified from 4 of the 16 races that year, a whopping 25%. Williams' Damon Hill won all 4 of those races and unexpectedly found himself as a title challenger to Michael. When Hill also soundly beat his German rival at a rain-soaked Shizuka, a title showdown in Australia was set. Schumacher led Hill by 1 point going into the last round. The Shizuka win gave the Briton a confidence boost, and Michael was feeling the pressure. It really showed when he had an almighty shunt in qualifying, but luckily he escaped without injury. During the race then, Schumacher jumped into an early lead, but Hill was never too far away and seemed to be the quicker of the two. What happened next is well known. On lap 36, Schumacher went wide and tapped the wall. He rejoined, having damaged his car, and when Hill tried to overtake the Benetton for the lead, Michael slammed the door shut and the pair collided. Schumacher was out, but so was Hill, having bent the suspension of the Williams in the process.
It's over now, and it's a bit of an empty feeling, but I think I gave him a good run for his money.
It was a very great battle between me and Damon, but nevertheless the feeling about the championship, winning the championship, it's a dream.
Schumacher thus celebrated his first title, albeit in very controversial fashion. It proved to be the first of an incredible 7 world championships. Amusingly, Damon Hill later drove the Benetton B194 at the Goodwood Festival of Speed back in 2019, this to celebrate Michael's 50th anniversary, and ever the gentleman, Damon didn't comment on the Benetton being illegal or not, and just paid tribute to his former rival. Being a huge Schumacher fan myself, I was really thrilled when Minichamps announced an Australian Grand Prix version of the B194. They had produced the Benetton before, which must have been around 1995. That model was based on the early season car, and several versions were made, although not entirely accurate, as the shape was still the early season shape. Minichamps then re-released the model a few years ago, a Brazilian Grand Prix version. This, however, was the same old mold they used, just with an added driver figurine. Needless to say, this model looked terribly outdated and was not good at all. Finally, Minichamps then reworked the tooling and first released the new mold B194 with this Mick Schumacher demo run model from Spa 2017. And then they made several other versions of the car, like a German Grand Prix car and a few more other iterations. The Schumacher shop then also released an Australian Grand Prix version in a fan shop exclusive flip-top box. The model is essentially the same as the standard Minichamps release, but for the packaging of course. Rival brand GP Replicas then also produced an Australian Grand Prix version, but this one is just terrible. It's basically lacking in every department. It doesn't have the tobacco decals, no driver figurine, the wheels are bad. I could go on for hours. It's even more expensive than the Minichamps, almost twice as expensive. So the version I bought is a standard Minichamps release from the Michael Schumacher collection, and it comes in a regular Minichamps windowed box with just a sticker on the side with all the models info. You can see it's limited to only 720 pieces, but you kind of have to count the 294 pieces of the fan shop edition too, as it's the very same metal car. And then as usual on the bottom you have all the licensing info and the proof that it's a metal diecast model. Underneath the base then there's a little pouch where the tobacco decals are set in. Of course I already applied them on the model, as you can see. The packaging is thus not very special. It just has this special back card with a picture of Michael, all the models info, his signature, and then these logos from the 25th anniversary collection. Let's first have a look at the half-scale helmet I have here, and it's an original Bell release. It's also a Bell XFM helmet, and it's from their old sports collection. These were still hand painted like the real ones. So this is Michael's original design too, with the white bands. It's a bit pearlescent actually. I don't know if you can tell on the pictures, but it's pearlescent white with the German flag colors in between. Well, German flag if you hold it like this. And then all of his personal sponsorship like Technogym and Decra. On the top of the helmet then you have this blue part, which apparently is the sky. And there's a bit of a sort of waffle structure in it. And then 7 stars, which is actually quite funny, of course, as Michael would go on to win 7 titles in his career. And it's as if he already knew that he would win 7. So yeah, pretty nice. These red orangey brush strokes then were added later on in the season. Now there are 2 later on in the season. There were 3, you'll see on the model car. There are 3 there, of course, because it's the Adelaide model. And then the 10 interior is also really nice. As usual, I did some upgrades to the helmet, courtesy of the HSA group. So I changed the visor screws, added tension posts and the tariffs and the tape on the tariffs, and then the tobacco decals as well, and this inscription of Pierre van Ginneken, or Pierre Vangin, the painter of the original helmet. So yeah, it's a beautiful and very rare half-scale replica of the helmet Michael used in 1994, and of course makes a great combo with the model car. Onto the steering wheel then, and it's a bit of a novelty from Minichamps, a half-scale steering wheel, and a pretty nice one at that. First of all, the packaging looks quite good too. It's a bit of a shoebox and has this clean grey silver finish, and just a simple description on the top, and the fact that it's a scale 1/2, so half scale. On the bottom then all the licensing info again, and yeah, this is a resin model. The wheel itself then, and it comes on this plastic glossy black base. It's the wheel is fixed into position then, so you can't take it off. There's a bit of movement, but I don't think it's supposed to do that, but you can't remove it for sure. On the base then there is a plaque with all the info on it, basically the same description as you get on the box. The steering wheel itself then is not that very complicated, as back then they were much simpler. Minichamps did a good job on it, I believe. They got the color right, the buttons and the clock are all there. I then added this sort of telephone wire myself, just to add a bit of realism. The feel of it is also really nice, the feel of the steering wheel. And there's some kind of velour texture in it, which has a very satisfying feel to it. The buttons then look good, although they aren't real buttons, so you can't click them. The Momo branding and the screws look really good too. And then this little Casio clock in the middle looks very nice, and it's actually something Schumacher always added to his steering wheels, and later on in his career in the cockpit of the car. And he didn't use it to check lap times, but more to know how much time there was during the sessions, to maybe go to the toilet or do quick setup changes. So yeah, there's a reason behind the clock, so it's not a lap time thing. On the back of the steering wheel then you have all of these, well, how to call it, yeah, housings for the buttons. And then the quick release mechanism of the wheel. The flappy pedal gearbox is pretty nice too. And you can see these pivot points as well. They don't move though or click, but you can push the material in a bit. But not too hard, of course, otherwise it would break. They do have this nice carbon texture decal on it, which yeah, looks quite good, I think. The steering wheel is a bit of a gimmick, of course. Not a lot of people would want it next to the model, but I think it's a nice thing to have, and yeah, especially in combination with the half-scale helmet and of course the model car. So let's now have a look at the model car itself, and overall I'd say it's a pretty good looking model car. The updated tooling is very nice, and the car doesn't look as plump anymore as it did before, especially on the side pods, and also the nose is much better now. And you can really see the progress they have made in all of these years. It's also a real specific race model now, so they tried to get all the details right from that year's Australian Grand Prix. And we'll focus on these details in a minute, but yeah, overall I think it's a great updated version. They really did a good job on it, and it's a huge improvement on the older version and much more accurate than GP Replica's effort, for instance. So let's focus on the cockpit now, and we'll begin with the helmet. And yeah, I think it looks pretty nice. The decals look smooth and crisp. And they also paid attention to these little details like these paint strokes here, as you can see on the half scale. There's only 2 of them on each side. But actually this helmet is based on a mid-season version where it only had these 2 strokes. Later on in the season at Adelaide especially, the helmet had these 3 brush strokes. So yeah, it's really nice they noticed that. Shape-wise, it's also quite okay. Too bad, of course, about Minichamps' typical brown visor. The figurine then is not extremely detailed. The seat belts are just simple decals, but they aren't too bad looking either. And the sponsor decals on the driver's suit are good, but nothing too special there. The inside of the cockpit then is well, quite okay. The steering wheel has the correct shape, but the color is a bit wrong. It should be more of a grey wheel. There are some details on it, like buttons and the Momo branding. You can actually see the shape of the Casio clock as well, but they didn't detail it further. The rest of the cockpit is quite okay as well, with this carbon fiber sort of color around the cockpit. The dashboard then is just well, mildly detailed with a few simple decals. I do like the electric warning stickers on the sides of the cockpit. So onto the wheels then, and as you can see they rotate, so the fronts and the backs. The fronts, they don't turn though, so there's no steering functionality, so the suspension is fixed in position, and the wheels are thus as well. The wheels themselves then are actually quite nice. I do like the white and green colored BBS branded rims. And then the wheel nuts also look really nice and are differently colored on either side, so red on the left and green on the right. As usual, I added detail to the sidewalls of the tires with the L and R markings for the left and the right wheels, and then all of the other markings as well. The shape of the tires and especially the width of the tires looks better than before. If we move on and look at the wings then, you'll notice the post-Monaco Grand Prix type front wing end plates. So no more of these connecting parts that go underneath the suspension and connect to the suspension, so basically it's cut off right here. The flaps then are also smaller and simpler, and it's a shame there's no cut underneath the flaps. I do like the rivet detailing on the end plates here. The rear wing then is also updated to late season spec with these little winglets attached to it. Normally it was basically cut off here, as you can see how the line goes, so for the early season wing. Here too on the end plate there is some rivet detailing, which is always a good thing, I think. The lower rear wing beams then have this nice curved shape. The main plane of the rear wing consists of 3 parts, but it's actually just one piece, so no separate elements, unfortunately. On the right end plate then you have this onboard camera, the one that shot Michael running into the wall and then almost flipping over when he collided with Damon, of course. So on to the finer details then. So as I mentioned, the nose has been reprofiled and it looks much better and sleeker now, and it typified the Benettons of those days. I then of course added the tobacco decals all over the model. The suspension looks nice too. It's simple plastic pieces, but back then they didn't have these sculpted carbon fiber pieces, they do now. The brake ducts though they lack a bit of detailing. The late season 2-piece barge boards look good too. On the early season version it was one big one, of course. Minichamps then also changed the airbox structure. The top part is actually in plastic now. They cleverly used the mild 7 separation line for it, and this way they could also add these cutouts in the airbox, as it was mandatory after Imola. The side pods then look much better too, a bit sleeker than on the old one. On the top of them, next to the cockpit, there are these fine antennas, and then this side camera is also nicely detailed. They then added these Dieses fasteners as well on the engine cover, which is a nice little detail. The side pods are nicely shaped, as I said, with this little step in it, and then the way it curves around the back is really nice. Here there's a little dent in it where it meets the floor, and it's actually cool that they noticed that. The fuel buckeye then is very nice on this model actually. They also put it on the correct side of the car. Before it was actually just a decal on the old model, now it's a real 3D piece. The rear light of the car then is in a bit of a funny place on the back end of the engine cover basically. Normally they would have put it here underneath the lower rear wing beam, but Benetton did it differently apparently. You can still see the lights from behind, so it kind of works. Next to the rear wing support then there's a little radiator to the left. Underneath then there's a diffuser, which teams also had to modify in the wake of the Imola weekend. The pickup points for the rear jack are really nice in this copper golden color, and then the exhaust is kind of hidden away in the diffuser. Onto the pros and the cons then, and well, I think it's a huge improvement over the old model, and actually I don't really see any cons. I actually really like as it is, and I think Minichamps did a really good job on it. So in conclusion, it's a good model car by Minichamps. They got most details right that were there for that specific race. It's a simple model, but of course back then the cars were just simple like this. It has some nice details, and to me it's definitely the best version out there of the Benetton B194. And if you're a huge Schumacher fan like I am, then of course it's a must buy for sure. So this was my review of this Minichamps Schumacher Diecast 118 Benetton B194. I'd like to thank you very much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more of this kind of content. And hopefully I'll see you again very soon.